All right, so hello everyone. I'm connected today with Scott Jacobs. You are the renowned, famous Harley-Davidson artist, and I'm really excited to chat with you today and learn about what you're doing because you've been in the art world specifically for Harley-Davidson for a couple decades now. So this is your life
Great.
mission. Yeah, 3 decades.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, how's it going, Scott? What's going on?
It's going great. I just piece of art that I did for Harley Davidson when my licensing started back in 1993, and it'll be the cover of the Sturgis magazine this year. It's never been on a cover everywhere in the world, and so many other my other pieces have been. So that's why I put it behind me. So people will get used to seeing that soon, and they come to the rally.
That's awesome. And you said you had painted that 30 years ago. You kind of cut out there. So I got a little half of that.
I painted it in July of '93, so almost 30 years ago, and it's an image that's been on products that have been sold all over the world, from T-shirts and posters, limited edition prints, uh, even pocket watches. And then just recently, last year, it came out as really high-end watches through Cuervo Sobrinos, which is a company that's been around for 150 years. And they made a limited edition watch of the image too, which is on the face.
Okay, wow. That's awesome. Well, that's a great piece of work. And I'm sure a lot of people who will be attending Sturgis will love to see it. So, can you tell us a little bit about your journey to becoming the first licensed Harley Davidson artist? How did you get started in the art world and what led you to focus on motorcycles and specifically Harley Davidsons?
Well, I've been into bikes since I was in high school.
Mhm.
I remember one day I went down to take my bicycle to get fixed at a local bike shop,
Mhm.
and they had just got in mopeds.
Okay.
Those little motorized bicycles. This is probably 1973 or 74, and I said to my mom, I said, "Could I get one of those?" It was like $700, and that back in '73, that's a lot of money.
Mhm.
And so my mom goes, "Well, what do you want that for? You got a bicycle?" I'm like, "Well, because this would be fun." And so she loaned me the money. And so the first motorized thing I had was a Motobacan, yellow, looked like a girl's bike because it had the down tube, have the boys' bikes, or, have the upper rod on it. And I rode that to school. Nobody else had one at school. And then by the next year, there was hundreds of them at the school. So I started a trend at my high school with that moped. That's the first motorized thing I ever had. And then slowly after that, I got a Kawasaki 250, then a 750, then a Suzuki 1000, and then I got into Harleys.
Mhm.
So I always had this like and love of motorized vehicles. And so what started the Harley thing was, if you go back to my early career in art, I started doing a lot of different things. I tried cubism, I tried all different styles of art. I tried expressionism, I tried abstract, I tried photorealism, which is a style that I paint today. And I was doing all kinds of things: buildings, scenery, waterfalls. Actually, the first water, my wife asked me when I met her early on, she says, "So you like painting?" I was like, "Yeah." She goes, "Show me one of your paintings." So I had this painting of a waterfall,
Mhm.
and I was proud of it. And she thought it was a sheepdog. So if you picture a waterfall coming down, and so it's narrow at the top, and as it comes down, it's getting wider.
Mhm.
And a little ways from the top of the waterfall is this rock jutting out, so
Mhm.
the water's hitting it and going around it. She thought that was the nose of the dog, and then all the water coming down was the hair of the sheepdog. So at that point, I should have probably thrown the towel and forgot about my art career. But to go back to my journey to Harley Davidson and how I got to where I am today, I was doing celebrities' portraits for years too. After that, and then I started doing cars, and then I was on the phone with one of the guys that I'd bought art from for a long, long time. His name's Ron Koppel. He lives actually close to where you live there, and he goes, "Why don't you paint motorcycles? Nobody's really doing motorcycles." And this is early '93.
Mhm.
And he says, "I was just in Topanga Canyon, and I went to the rock store, the rock shop, that place there, whatever it's called." And he goes, "There's just motorcycles everywhere." He goes, "What about, putting the motorcycle lifestyle on canvas?" And so I went, looked through some books. I got some photo reference and things. And Live to Ride was actually the piece behind me, was a photo I found in a book.
Mhm.
and I did a painting of it. And I did another one of a 1990 Fat Boy. And then I brought them to what's called Art Expo in New York City. And that's a huge art event where gallery owners from all over the world, including Canada, would come and they would look at artists' work and pick out art to carry in their galleries. And so at that event, I get this basically tap on my shoulder, and it was the Beanstalk Group. The Beanstalk Group is the licensing arm for Harley-Davidson out of New York City. They said, you know, you can't do that. And I said, what do you mean I can't do that? They said, well, you have to be licensed to paint our nomenclature, you know, the word fat boy or whatever it was on the pieces. He said, these are all trademark and licensed images. And so I said, well, how do I get licensed? They said, well, we don't license artwork. And I was like, well, you just said I had to be licensed, but you're saying we don't license art. And he goes, licensing agreements are these big documents. They take a lot of time to put together. And we're not going to spend the time for you to license that image that's behind me. And it would be too much work, too expensive for the amount of revenue we would make. And I said, I want to do this on an ongoing basis. When this painting's done, I want to do another one and another one and another one, so on. And they're like, well, we're not really sure, you know. So they gave me a cease and desist order saying I can't do what I was doing. And so I continued doing it. I did two other paintings, and then this art expo event happens in New York, and it also happens in Los Angeles as well. And so I did the Los Angeles one, and those same people came to that show.
Mm.
And it basically, but they were walking around the event with Jeff Bluestein, who was the chairman of the board of Harley-Davidson at the time. And they came into the booth and they said, well, Jeff goes, is this the guy you were talking about? And they're like, yeah, we've already sent him a cease and desist. And Jeff goes, this stuff's really nice. He goes, why don't we try to work something out? And so now all of a sudden, because the chairman says, oh, maybe we can work something out, those guys were like, oh, yeah, maybe we should work something out. So 3 months later, long story short, I became the first licensed artist in the world to produce fine art paintings for Harley-Davidson, which means that the images are in their archives. If you were, say, a company that made puzzles, you could contact Harley-Davidson and you could get the rights to an image of mine to make puzzles with my images on them, or beach towels, or all the products that have been made around the world over the years. But that's how it all started, was from that conversation I had with Ron Koppel, who has been a lifelong friend of mine, that mentioned, why don't you paint Harleys? I gave it a shot, and here I am, 30 years later, still doing it.
That's interesting how it started, that they gave you papers from a lawyer, like, stop what you're doing, and then,
Yeah.
30 years later, you have such a great connection with them and partnership. So that's really great. And I'd like to know, and let's talk a little bit more about your artwork. So you have a lot of great detail and realism in all your work, especially the motorcycles that you paint. So can you walk us through what your artistic process is from concept to completion, and how do you decide on the subject matter that you're painting, and what techniques do you use to achieve such real life works of art?
Well, there is online. If a viewer wanted to go to Scott Jacobs on YouTube
Mhm.
and then put in the word perfect blend, Scott Jacobs perfect blend on YouTube, there's actually a time lapse video, which took a long time. I have never in my entire career, 45 years of painting, had ever done a time lapse before. And so my daughter said, you need to do one, because people ask this question all the time. So the perfect blend is a wine image that I did with a Harley Davidson wine bottle in it. And if you watch that, it's only like 2.5 minutes long. You can see the process start to finish. But to give you an idea, a lot of the images over the years have come from
Mhm.
life experiences of being a part of the motorcycle industry. Like certain bikes that I've seen around the country or around the world with really cool backgrounds.
Mhm.
I've noticed over the years that when I paint a vintage motorcycle, the audience is bigger.
Mhm.
Meaning, like, say if I paint a 2022 or 2023 Fat Boy, which is a great bike and a lot of people have it. The problem is, if I paint a black one and somebody has a red one, like, oh, I'd buy that if it was red. Or, well, I have custom wheels on that and I'd buy it if it had my wheels on it. But when you paint a classic motorcycle that any motorcyclist or collector would love to own, the market is way bigger for me. So I learned that after doing a lot of newer bikes. I learned that the old vintage bikes sell a lot better than the new ones.
Mm.
But to answer your question, it's a combination of ideas that come in my head.
Mhm.
Like one I just finished was called Daddy's Girl.
Mhm.
And Daddy's Girl has a 37 beautiful knucklehead, which is one of our bikes in our collection. And that bike is in an old barn, like in the entranceway to an old barn. And there's a young girl who's actually putting a note into the saddlebag of the bike for her dad. Her dad's in the background packing his bag. And if you look at the calendar on the wall, you can see that it's August. All the dates are crossed off, and the next week on the calendar says Sturgis. So you can tell it's the night or the day that he's leaving for Sturgis, and his daughter is leaving him a note in the bag, say, "Sorry, I'll miss you so much," or travel safe. I can't remember exactly what the note says. And she's kind of like making sure her dad doesn't see him or her putting that note in the bag.
Mm.
And the last thing, because I did it in 2020, and in the bag, he's putting in a mask because that was COVID year when COVID started. So he's being safe. So he's putting his mask in there. So I try to do pieces that tell a story. I try to do pieces that are all about a motorcycle. So I might just do a close up of an engine and a tank to show the mechanics of a motorcycle,
Mhm.
which I did early in my career up till about 1998. I'm having a brain fart of their name. They did collector plates. Oh, the Franklin Mint.
Okay.
And the Franklin Mint said, "We'd like to do a series of collector plates with your images, but the close ups don't round out well for a plate. So could you paint more of the motorcycle so that when we rounded it out for the shape of a plate, it would look better?" And so that's when I made the transition of doing all these close-up detailed pieces of motorcycles into incorporating the entire motorcycle and a really detailed background.
Mhm.
I did that for Franklin Mint. So once I have a bike picked out for a piece, I have an idea. I might do a pencil sketch, thumbnail sketch to figure out the composition. And then I try to capture the composition or the idea in my mind in photo reference. So I have something to work from. Because as a photorealist, you're only as good as your reference.
Yeah.
Sometimes I have the motorcycle right next to me. So, if I'm painting a part and I don't really know exactly how that part looks, I need to look directly at it so I can paint it correctly. Because Harley Davidson would go over my paintings with a fine tooth comb and make sure that none of the parts were aftermarket parts
Yeah.
and they were accurate. So if this part's from another bike, another year, they would reject the painting. Or if I had a bag on the front underneath the headlight that came from another company, they wouldn't approve that painting to be made a poster or a print because of that aftermarket part. So once I figure out all the composition, I get the photo reference, I draw the image out on canvas. I use what's called Belgian linen. Belgian portrait linen is one of the top canvases in the world, super smooth, great quality. I draw it out in pencil, and then I start from the background and I move forward. The reason I do that, if you think about a painting of mine, you've probably seen some of them, right? I would assume. Uh, when I'm moving forward, so say I'm painting the background and I'm painting a blue sky with a bunch of clouds in it, I don't have to be so accurate with the edges of where the clouds are against, say, the motorcycle, because the clouds could maybe go over where the headlight is going to be or over the edge of the seat or whatever, because the bike's going to be in front of it.
Mm.
So if you start from the back and you move forward, I can clean up the edges of everything till I move to the front of the painting. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, because the motorcycle is the focus point at that point, or
Yeah,
the
yeah. Because picture trying to paint, say I have the spokes and everything drawn out of the motorcycle, and then try to paint the background between all the spokes and make it look consistent in your blend. It's easier just to paint the whole background and then paint the motorcycle and everything in front of it and just move forward on the piece. It saves a lot of time, and that was something that took a few pieces to figure out. After painting for so many years, and I think probably any artist that you might speak to would probably say we're a constant student. We learn something new with every painting, and I do definitely. But does that answer your question?
Yeah, thanks for sharing how that goes about because I know every artist is different with their creative process and how they go about things. So, yeah, thank you for sharing all the details and the fact you're very open how you said that, I'm always learning. And I think that makes a great artist because you can never be the best because we're always learning. And maybe I shouldn't say you can never be the best, but you're always learning. I think that's the key to that. So that's really great. And it's interesting that you mentioned when you're painting for Harley Davidson that they look at everything with a magnifying glass. So
Yep.
of course they want everything to replicate their brand as much as possible. So how has your relationship with Harley Davidson evolved over the years? And what do you see as the key elements that have made your partnership with them so successful?
Um, Harley in the last few years, it's changed a lot, to be honest with you. Harley Davidson, early on, they had somebody that was specifically in charge of the fine art program, which was, at times it was Willie G. We worked on the 100th anniversary images directly with Willie G for in 2002 and 2003. And the painting I did for them is in their museum in Milwaukee. It's changed. It's been good at times, and it's been frustrating, to be honest with you, because I remember at times, I would submit an image for approval, and I remember one piece back in about 1998 that was rejected because I went to Joshua Tree State Park, and I actually got a motorcycle that was an experimental model that was coming out, and I got it up on a boulder, and I photographed it for up on this boulder, but you could see a little bit of the undercarriage of the motorcycle. And so Harley rejected it, and they told me that the underside of the bike was not intended for the rider to see.
Hmm.
And I'm like, okay. So I did this beautiful piece. I'm trying to remember what it was called. Just a great piece, but it was never printed because of that. And then 6 months later, I see the photo reference on the cover of their calendar. The photo reference that I took in Joshua Tree State Park that they rejected for a limited edition print, but now it's on the cover. It's okay for the cover of the calendar, but not okay to become a print. It's because it was a different set of people
Interesting.
that were approving calendars
Hmm.
than approving the fine art, which was frustrating for me over the years. And then, at one time we had a woman that was, she worked for the Currents Check Company. She never rode a motorcycle in her entire life, knew nothing about motorcycles. And now she's in charge of the fine art program approval process. So you submit something to her, and I remember her rejecting something because she didn't like the color of the motorcycle. I'm like, it's one of Harley Davidson's stock colors.
Yeah.
I mean, take it up with the motor company then, because that's one of your colors. And so I fought back. I went over her head, and it got approved. But lately, we don't talk to many people that much. Their interior has changed a lot over the years. It was great working directly with them for so many years, and now it's very different now, than it used to be.
And has that changed maybe because we are all working from home and you and I were zooming right now? Is it something like that or just everything's changed as a whole for the company?
Um, you know, I think that part of it is that the fine art program, I don't think has been a great revenue stream for them.
Oh, I
You know
see.
what I mean? Because for us, when we sell prints and we sell posters and all that, we pay a royalty to them.
Mhm.
And it's just not big numbers, where you have a t-shirt company that might sell 5 million t-shirts in a year, that's significant revenue from them, for them, where, you're selling a few hundred limited edition prints, it doesn't really change their day. I think that maybe the people, maybe they were getting paid more a year than the revenue that was coming in. I think that's probably, what changed over the years. I think that the motor company should be and is proud of all the images that I've produced for them, or artist David Ewell has produced for them. Um, Tom Fritz used to be licensed by Harley Davidson years ago, and Jeff Decker, who does sculptures. And there's another artist, Eric Herman out of Arizona, who's I think he actually started doing motorcycles just prior to me doing them. And if you think about all the artists that have impacted the motorcycle world, there's really only been five of us. And I was the first one licensed. I've been doing it steadily for 30 years. David came on about 5 years after me. Eric, I think, has been doing it about as long as me. Tom doesn't do it anymore. He had a blow up with his old publisher, and so that dissolved pretty quickly. And then Jeff, I think, is still doing motorcycle sculptures. So
Okay, so it's still going on, and you still have this still a great partnership where you're still able to.
I love Harley Davidson. I painted some other brands. I mean, they're the company that I love, that I like to stand behind, that I promote. All the bikes in my gallery, I have 9 vintage bikes down there. They're all Harley Davidsons. Um, I don't have any Indians down there or any competing motorcycles. They told me early on when I started doing the Harleys that they would prefer if I didn't paint anything that was in competition with Harley Davidson, meaning somebody that was in business at the same time.
Mhm.
And if I wanted to paint Indians, if I could paint pre 53 Indians, because the original Indian company that started in 1901 went out of business in 1952, and then they also produced some bikes out of parts in 1953. So I think purists with Indian, that's probably the life of that company, because now technically they're a Polaris product.
Mm, sure,
You
yeah.
because they bought the name. I mean, they did put money behind making a unique engine and everything. And I mean, people love them. They're a great bike, but I've never ridden one. Um, it's funny, I've done a lot of TV stuff over the years, and I was doing this Discovery Channel thing. I had a museum show in, where I was in, outside of Atlanta. And they had this group of bikers that were going to ride from this Harley Davidson dealership, and we were going to go to my museum opening. And then they brought me a victory bike. And they're like, I said, I can't ride that. And they're like, oh, we thought you rode. I was like, I do ride. I said, but I'm not going to ride a victory motorcycle when Harley Davidson has been my lifeblood for 30 years. I need to be on a Harley, especially on TV.
Yeah.
I want to be on a Harley. Me being on the victories, yeah, I can ride that, but I don't want to. You know what I mean? I love the Harley family. They've been close friends of mine for very many years, and they've opened up a lot of doors for me. So it felt like if I rode that bike, it'd be kind of a slap in the face.
And I'm sure you probably signed some sort of NDA of some sort, so you probably legally couldn't have done it either.
Well, I could have. I don't have an NDA. I have had NDAs with the Harley in the past
Mhm.
when they gave me access to all the 100th anniversary bikes prior to anybody knowing the colors or anything, right? Which was funny because I didn't even know, like early 2002. So 2003 is the 100th anniversary of Harley Davidson. And I go into this secret basement in Milwaukee where all the new models are and all the new colors are. And I have an NDA that's saying that I can't talk about what the colors are, what the models look like, or anything. And I didn't. And I signed that thing, and I didn't talk about them. But a lot of people in the industry knew I went down there to photograph the bikes for the 100th anniversary paintings. And they're like, "Oh yeah, we hear it's gray, and one of them is silver, and this." It's like everybody already knew all the colors. Here I'm signing an NDA, and I'm like, well, I'm not saying yes or no. They're like, just nod your head. I'm like, no, I have an NDA. I can't talk about it. But everybody I talked to already knew all the colors. They knew all the different colors that were out there. So somebody that might have signed an NDA let the cat out of the bag way early.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's kind of funny that they were quizzing you, even though they slightly already knew what the colors were. But
Yeah,
telling me earlier, so that painting behind you, it will be used at Sturgis, and
yeah,
you
it'll be the cover of Sturgis. Yeah.
yeah, which is exciting. Congratulations for that. And you've been a regular attendee to the rally for quite some time, and your art has become a fixture of the event. So, can you tell us about your first Sturgis experience and how the rally?
Oh, it was amazing. It was so cool. I mean, geez. First time I was at Sturgis, 94. And I run into some guys I'm talking to, and I don't know who they are. One of them is Arlen Ness, the world famous bike builder who passed away a few years ago. It became an amazing friend, his whole family, great friends of ours. And so I met Arlen Ness. I met Barry Cooney, Keith Ball, the editor of Easy Rider magazine. Um, what's his name? Mike Corbin of Corbin Seats. I met all these people the first year, and you're like, "Oh wow, your work is great! My God, Mike Corbin even buys two of my paintings." And then Keith Ball says, "I'm gonna do an article about you in Easy Rider magazine." And I'm like, "Well, great." And then I meet Buzz Cantor of American Iron magazine. Next thing I know, I'm on the cover of American Iron magazine, and his wife, Buzz Cantor's wife's like, "Oh, who's that model you hired for the cover of the magazine?" They're like, "No, he's a Harley artist." She's like, "What?" She thought I was eye candy back then. So I'm on the cover of Easy Rider magazine. I've got a full length story in Big Twin magazine, V Twin magazine. I'm like on every publication that you can think of. So here I am at my first Sturgis, and you would think by that next year I was in the industry for 20 years already, because so many people knew me because of all those people I met that first year. Basically, I had a 10 by 10 booth on the corner of Main and like Second Avenue. So 10 by 10, easy up. I had a van. I had my art in the back. So every morning we had to set up the booth because there was no way for us to secure what we brought. And then at the end of the day, we broke it down. We got there in the morning, we set it up, broke it down every day for like 2 weeks. And I stood in the hot sun on that corner and the rain and everything like that. I had maybe, I don't know, 6 or 8 pieces, a few posters, and maybe a few limited edition prints. But I got invited to the right things. I got Performance Machines invited me to an event along with Corbin Seats over in Sturgis. I'm trying to remember that. It was called the Philtown Inn. They would have an industry party every year around the pool at the Philtown Inn, and that's where I met everybody I needed to meet. They said, "Hey, why don't you hang some of your art here at the party, and then you could talk to people." And that's where I met like everybody in the industry, and everybody was willing to help me. I mean, that's one thing that's amazing about this industry. It's not all about egos. People, builders are willing to help other people.
Yeah.
Magazines are willing to help other people. Some magazines would say, "Oh, Easy Rider did a story on you, so we're not going to." They got the first story on you. Everybody was amazing. But that's my first Sturgis. That was 1994.
Yeah, and I mean, it's just progressed, I'm sure, for you since then because your art keeps continuing to be promoted there. So that's really great. And I would love to know what's looking ahead for you. Like, what are your plans and your goals for the future of your art and your career in the motorcycle industry? I'd love to hear more about that.
I love doing it. The reason that I love the motorcycles is because I'm all about detail.
Mhm.
And painting a motorcycle, especially an antique bike that's all chipped up and rusted and all these braided lines and stuff, it is such a challenge as a photorealist, detail-oriented artist. So, believe it or not, after all these years, I am still so motivated to stand in front of a blank canvas
Mhm.
just to see what I can do. Um, I never get sick of people coming up and go, "Oh my God, look at that! It's a painting." You don't get sick of hearing that. I don't need it for my ego, but to go and do a show, I don't know if you know how my paintings sold for over $300,000 now,
Wow.
more than what the motorcycles would cost.
Mhm.
I could do a vintage bike that might be worth 150,000, and the painting of the bike
Mhm.
is selling for twice as much as the bike is worth. I never thought that would happen in my entire lifetime. And I'm still alive because usually that happens when artists are dead. Those dead guys get all the big bucks, but they don't need the money. I always say that at my events. I said, you should collect artists from or collect art from living artists because the dead guys don't need the money, right? But I'm going to continue doing it. I've got a lot of stories I need to tell with my paintbrush, and people are still buying it. And I've been on the cover of the Sturgis magazine every year since 95. So I think it's, what's that, 27, 28 years in a row now. That image was the first piece of art that was ever licensed by Harley-Davidson in their 120-year history. And there's only going to be one piece that was the first image. So this particular piece, I'll tell you a real quick story about it. Back in 93, friends of ours from New York were heard I was getting licensed by Harley and my contract was going to go into effect shortly.
Mhm.
And so they came and we went out to dinner with them and say, well, we want one of your paintings before you go under contract. So they bought Live to Ride, which is behind me.
Mhm.
And they have never had it in their possession in 30 years. I've had it hanging on my wall ever since they bought it. And I just recently came out with a 2-year payment plan to buy it back from them at way, way more than they originally paid for it.
Yeah.
So they gave me 2 years to pay for it. So I am the I'm not I don't own it 100%, but technically I guess I do own it because I'm making payments on
So that's a very interesting case that you have here, that you're buying back one of your pieces. So that leads me to a question. Have you considered doing any NFTs with your work? Now that's kind of the latest and greatest with artwork.
it. I have been asked a couple times, and I think I've said no because I don't think I understand it, to be honest with you. Um, from what I understand, basically, I'd be giving up my rights to all these images that I've done over the years, and I don't really want to do that because I don't know where they would go. I like owning them. When you're talking about me buying the piece behind me back, I've actually bought back about 40, 45 of my original Harley paintings over the last 6 or 7 years. I just bought 8 more back from a Harley dealer that's retiring in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. And a lot of people ask me, why would you do that? Why wouldn't you just paint another one? Because they take 2 to 3 months to paint.
Mm.
And if you think about it, 8 paintings times 2 to 3 months, that's a year and a half of my time that probably went into those 8 paintings that I'm getting back. I've got approximately about a 2, 2.5 year wait list for people to acquire a Harley painting of mine. And so now all of a sudden I got 8 pieces. I
Mhm.
can go to the people that are in the waiting list and see if one of the pieces that I just bought back would be fine for their collection rather than them wait. So I'm getting a year and a half back of my time just for those 8 paintings. That's
And
why I've been buying it back. And I know my market better than anybody in the world because I know who's looking for my pieces. I know the value of these pieces.
mhm.
So I'm actually going to fly to Baltimore and then drive down to Gettysburg to actually inspect the paintings and box them up myself. Because you think about it, those 8 paintings, there hasn't been a Harley painting of mine to sell for any lower than $250,000 in the last 3 years.
Hmm.
So those 8 paintings, think about the retail value on those. That's $2 million worth of paintings that I'm buying back.
Wow.
Uh, it's a lot. You know, it's a lot. They're beautiful images. All of them are published, which means that they're all either a T-shirt or a limited edition print. They were published as something, so they're well-known images around the world.
And because they're such a high price, is it because it's licensed and it's being used in all different areas? Is that what marks it high?
Well, that's part of it. I don't think that people that are fine art collectors are I don't think they really care much about a piece being licensed by Harley Davidson. That I don't think that really adds much value to it. The word license for me, which means basically Harley Davidson's giving a stamp of approval of the image itself. So they're looking at it and they're saying, okay, this is fine, this is fine. Because there are other artists out there that paint motorcycle pieces. They're not licensed by Harley, and Harley's not even looking at their things or even trying to get them to stop doing it. Same thing with Chevrolet and all those issues. There's a fine line between actually needing to be licensed and being licensed. I always wanted to have the approval of Harley Davidson because I love the brand.
Mhm.
I have an HD. I don't know if you can see it on my arm.
Oh, yeah, I see
See it?
that. Nice.
Which isn't a Harley Davidson. That isn't for Harley Davidson anyway.
Oh, what is that for?
Well, it was for my first 2 grandkids, Hendrix and Daisy,
Oh,
H and D.
cute. So
Yeah,
you just kind of say it's for everybody in my life.
yeah. So it works. It works both ways. So it covers the Harley Davidson need, and it covers the. And then I just had a third grandkid, and his name is Levi.
Oh,
So now on the circle, I'm going to do the little Levi tag from the jeans.
oh, cool.
I didn't know how to incorporate Levi into that tattoo, so I'm going to do a little thing on the side. Is either that or do that, that. Wait, hold on. Let me see if I can do it. That thing on your butt, on the back of your pants.
Yes, yeah.
It was either that or get that tattooed on my ass. Could you imagine? Hey, Grandpa, show everybody my tattoo.
That's kind of legendary, that one actually.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Grandpa pulling his pants down.
yeah, I mean that's a classic old man move, and you could get away with it at a certain age for sure.
That would be funny.
You have been riding for quite some time, involved with the motorcycle industry for a long time.
Yep.
And we're Russ Brown motorcycle attorneys. We help you when you fall. So I'd like to know, have you ever been in a motorcycle accident? And if so, what did you learn?
Yes, I learned that pavement is really, really hard.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
absolutely.
I actually should have called you guys. My God, yeah, because we tried. Another lawyer tried suing the city where I crashed, because it was because of their negligence that I crashed.
Mhm,
2016, motorcycle cannonball,
mhm,
racing from New Jersey to San Diego. I came around a turn on the second day of the race on my 1915 Harley, and it's a $150,000 motorcycle,
mhm,
and came around a turn and they had graveled the entire road
mhm,
so they could slurry coat it, but they didn't put the slurry coat on it to hold the gravel in place. They had no signage. They had no flagman, no warning that the gravel was on the road. And so I'm sliding on this gravel and I'm doing pretty good. I'm holding the bike up.
mhm.
And then as I'm coming down the hill, there's an intersection, there's cars going in both directions. And so do I take the chance and go to the intersection and maybe get run over by a car or hit the side of a car? I didn't want to take that chance. So I laid the bike down, which is a defensive move as a motorcyclist. And I'm sliding on the ground. I had the right gear on. I had a great coat on, ballistic pants. I had the right riding gear, a helmet. And then all of a sudden, my bike hit like this hump in the road and it high sided me. It actually lifted me off the ground and threw me in the air and I landed on my shoulder. I obliterated my humerus. I severed both of my biceps, my rotator attachments, my ulnar nerve, and spent 8 days in the hospital in Western Maryland. And they implanted a new, like what would be called like a full shoulder replacement,
Mhm.
but an elongated rod because my humerus was in pieces. And dealt with that for a couple of years, a long time of recovery.
Mhm.
My hand was numb, couldn't feel my fingers. I started painting lefty,
Mhm.
um, which I don't paint well lefty. As a righty my whole life, I'm not ambidextrous. I can only paint righty. A couple of years ago, they did a revision of it. They cut me open. They broke my arm again. They pulled that prosthetic out. They put a different style in. And this time they put the ball into my glenoid and screwed it in at the top. And it works a lot better now. I don't have full range of motion, but I am painting full time though now. Again, and I don't have to paint lefty anymore. But yes, to answer your question, I've had 3 motorcycle accidents, one in Spain, one in New Jersey, and then one in Maryland.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you were able to adapt during that time for painting, and I'm sure you
Me
learned
too.
a lot to
Yeah.
like how, adversity can really push you, propel you to what you need to do, and now you're at this point. So live and learn, and I guess you
Yeah.
can paint a little bit better with your left hand now.
No, I don't. I don't really use my left hand at all. But I think that I technically painting as good as I ever have in my entire life. Even better than I did prior to the accident.
Mhm.
But the one thing, laying on the ground and laying in the hospital for that long time, I was thinking to myself about all of the paintings and the ideas I've had in my brain for
Mhm.
many years that I hadn't put onto canvas yet. So I made the decision then, because think about, I'm not only have done work for Harley-Davidson for so many years, but licensed by Chevrolet Motor Company since 97,
Mhm.
Hot Wheels Racing since 97, the Marilyn Monroe estate, the Elvis Presley estate, Ford Motor Company. I've been dealing with all those companies for, between 25 and 30 years. And the problem as an artist, I mean, it's great to have those companies behind you, but you know what you're going to do every day.
Right.
You know what I mean? I've got to do, say, 5 paintings for Harley Davidson in the year, and I got to do Chevrolet, and I got to do this and this. So I lay out my year and I'm like, so I don't have time to think outside the box and do anything, for myself, for my home or a friend or whatever, because I'm so tied into all these companies and these contracts. So after that accident, I realized that I need to do more for myself. I need to do some pieces that I've been thinking about for many years, and let me put those on my schedule in between the ones that I have to do. So that changed for me after the accident.
Okay, almost like a blessing in disguise because you were able to reconnect with yourself and what you like.
Yeah, and it's like as a, so many people that I know have been killed on their bikes or had accidents and had major, major things happen to them, a lot worse than what happened to me. But you could be out on it was a beautiful morning in September in Western Maryland, and yeah, I was living the dream as a motorcyclist, and then that one corner took me down and changed my life.
Yeah.
You know, what's scary? I mean, nobody knows what's going to happen. And I do notice that when I'm on my bike, I think I'm more aware
Mhm.
than I am driving a car, because
Mm,
you're more vulnerable on a motorcycle. And I look everywhere. I scan everything. I think about that car coming over there. Are they texting? Are
mhm.
they swerving a little bit? And I drive very, very defensively after these accidents that I've had.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. Just hyper focused, I find even when I'm riding, and you can take that into your life. And I feel like a lot of riders have really great intuition too, because you are always on guard for yourself in your life. So that's a interesting point that you bring up. And for my last question, I want to ask, because you talked a little bit about it, that you were in Spain where you crashed, you were in Maryland, so you've obviously taken a lot of road trips on your bike. So
Yep.
what road trip or ride have you taken that has given you the most inspiration for any of your work, or even a specific piece of work?
Um, I love riding around Europe,
Mhm.
definitely. I haven't done too many European bike pieces, but as far as riding, I mean, I love riding around the Grand Tetons. I mean, I'm sitting in my gallery right now on Main Street in Deadwood, right in the center of motorcycle mecca of the United States. I love riding around the Black Hills. I think that's why Sturgis Rally has gotten, so huge over the years, because it's such an amazing place to ride and the roads are kept so well. Probably one of the most memorable rides that I've had was probably when I crashed in Spain.
Mhm.
I was over there with Big Twin Magazine, and I and Arlen Ness were like celebrity guests for that. So they would do these rides where they would promote these rides with Bo Pacheco was the editor of the magazine. And then I think it was about 38 couples came with us, and we flew into Carcassonne, France, and we started at the walled city of Carcassonne, and we drove over the what are those mountains called between Spain and France,
I don't.
Pyrenees, the Pyrenees Mountains.
Okay, nice.
That was the coldest I've ever been in my life on a motorcycle, was riding over the Pyrenees Mountains in the summer. I think we were at like 15,000 feet and it was freezing. I remember stopping into a little village up there, and then, putting our hands underneath the hair dryer in the bathroom just to try to warm our hands up. But that's probably one of the most memorable rides. And then one time I had the honor of, excuse me, of riding with the guys in ZZ Top in
Oh,
Switzerland.
wow.
So yeah, we were friends with Bo, or not Bo Pacheco. I'm trying to remember his name now. I'm getting old. I don't have, my memory's not as great anymore. But the road manager of ZZ Top was a friend of ours for many years, and they were playing in Zurich, Switzerland. I was making an appearance at a Harley dealer in Zug, Switzerland, ZUG, and Pablo Gamboa is his name. Pablo saw on a billboard that I was making an appearance locally. So he calls the dealership and asks if I was there. And I happened to be there setting up the show for them. And then they said, well, we're in town too. Maybe we can get a ride together. I said, well, you guys got bikes? He goes, no, but, figure the dealership could probably loan us some.
Mhm.
So we went riding through the freaking Alps, with ZZ Top. It was amazing, except for
Nice.
the paparazzi. That was the scary
Oh,
part.
huh.
People on other motorcycles with a photographer sitting backwards on the back of the bike trying to get photos of, the guys riding motorcycles.
Mhm.
But that was pretty cool. That was a very memorable ride riding through Switzerland. I love that too as well.
And is there any specific piece of artwork that really you drew inspiration from that trip from?
Uh, no, not really.
Okay.
Because I don't do much as far as scenery.
Mhm.
I do some Norman Rockwell-esque pieces, like the ones with the kids and people in them. Yeah, I mean, if you look back at pieces of mine like Finishing Touch, which has a beautiful woman like yourself that's, doing her eye makeup, looking in the chrome, or I've used my daughters in many pieces over the years because I get the ideas for the paintings from them because they're motorcyclists too. And I see my wife, pull over, and the first thing she does is touch up her lip gloss. Maybe there's some bugs sticking in it or something like that. And so it's, a lot of the ideas come from my life as a motorcyclist. I'm trying to think about all the images that are in the archives for Harley Davidson and all the images that I've done over the years. I'm trying to document what Harley Davidson has brought to the world.
Mhm.
Military bikes, police bikes, you know, flatheads and panheads and knuckleheads and shovelheads, all the eras of motorcycling and the motorcycle industry. Kids being inspired by their parents because they have motorcycles. Like one of the pieces I just did was called God, brain fart again. Moments like these. And
Okay.
it's a little boy helping his mom wash her motorcycle because there's a ton of women in the motorcycle industry that ride bikes. And so she's washing her 1936 Harley Davidson. And this little boy, her son, came over on his little Stingray motorcycle that is the same color of mom's bike. And he's helping her wash it. I mean, so obviously he's got his bike with his handlebars and everything, same color as mom's bike, and he's washing it. So he's probably going to be a future motorcyclist. One of the top pieces I've done in the last, say, 7 years is a piece called The Writings on the Wall. And the writings on the wall is a boy on a Stingray, and he's riding down this alleyway, brick wall behind him, and the shadow of him on the wall is him as an adult on a chopper.
Mm.
So that came from an idea I had as a kid. So when I would ride my bicycle, I would look down at my shadow on the ground and I would envision myself on a motorcycle in that shadow.
Mm.
And that's what that painting is all about. And I've done 3 different motorcycle pieces that are shadow pieces. One of them's a little boy on a tricycle, and his shadow down below him, which is on a hopscotch board,
Mm.
is him as an adult. And then I did one of a couple that are on a chopper as well, like on a Stingray. They're
Mm.
riding together. And then their shadow on the wall is them on an ultra classic as adults
Oh,
in the same pose they're doing on the back of the motorcycle as kids. So it all comes, and I love when people call me or send me a message on Facebook and they say, I think this would be a great image for a painting. People constantly send me, messages, private message on Facebook, and like, I think this would be great. I think this would be great. And some of them are, and some of them not so much. You know what I mean? You
expected.
get yeah, somebody sends me a photo of them and their grandkids and the dog standing in front of the motorcycle and think it should be a great painting. It's like, you got to think about images that would have legs, images that many people would want to hang on the wall. And that's been a hard thing to come up with for 30 years. Like a singer. Think
Mhm.
about a singer. A singer is only as relevant as his newest hit.
Mhm.
Otherwise, you're just basically a tribute band to yourself, playing your old hits. And there's many bands around the world that do that. A good friend of mine, Gary Puckett from the 60s, he's 80 years old now. He's still traveling around the world, but he hasn't written a new song in 50 years.
Mm.
Where an artist has to produce a new image to stay relevant. I
Mhm.
can't go around to shows and, once my limited editions are sold out, I need new images. When I do an event like just to give you an idea, since December, I did a show in New Zealand, I
Mhm.
did a show in Australia, I did South Africa, I did Durban, which is in South Africa as well. I just did Buenos Aires in Argentina, I did Patagonia, I did Daytona Bike Week, and I just got back from South America 4 days ago. That's since December.
Yeah.
And each time, yeah, it's a lot, right? But it got me away from the cold here. But think about all the images. I have to produce new images every time between a show.
Mm.
A good friend of ours is Travis Tritt. I don't know if you know Travis. He's a famous country singer. And we were riding during Sturgis last year, and we were talking about our travel schedules. And he goes, "Oh, we live similar lifestyles." He was saying. I was like, "What do you mean? Because of our travel?" And he goes, "Yeah, we're always constantly on the road." I was like, "Yeah, there's a big difference." And he goes, "What do you mean?" I said, "You don't have to write new songs between each concert." I said, you can go home and hang out, do whatever you want. You just got to show up on the plane or get on your bus and go sing the songs you already wrote. I have to produce new paintings.
Mm.
Then I get to stand out on stage with all those paintings behind me, unveil them. Those are my new songs. I just wrote these new songs. Are they going to be a hit? I have no idea. I don't know if they're going to have legs and people are going to want to hang those images on their wall or put it on a t-shirt or a puzzle or anything. It's tough being a relevant artist for your career. It's a lot of struggle, and Travis totally got it. He goes, "You're right, man." He goes, "When I'm home, I hanging out with my family, my friends, and I just get on the bus or I fly somewhere and I sing the songs I already know that I've been performing, all over the world." So
Well, that's very interesting, and I never really thought about it that way, being an artist, and especially you've been doing it for so long. So you mentioned even before in the interview that you did a lot of new Harley Davidson paintings of new models, and it just didn't kick off like it should have. But other ones have kicked off, but they're always classic. So I feel like you figured out what that recipe is to
yeah,
continue for literally the rest of your life doing your passion.
yep. And I started in, I don't know if you know much about, in 2004, right after the 100th anniversary, I started what we call the lifestyle series for Harley Davidson, which is an interesting thing.
Mhm.
So Harley Davidson makes wine glasses, martini glasses, all kinds of stuff for your bar and everything. So I had a Harley Davidson pool table at home. I had a really cool Harley Davidson frosted glass. And so I did a still life basically. So I took the martini glass, I put it on the corner of the pool table, the pool balls in the rack behind it. And I laid this beautiful pool cue down with flames on it. And I did a painting of that. I
Mhm.
submitted it to Harley Davidson for approval. And they said, "Oh no, we can't promote drinking and driving." And I said, "Well, how's that promoting drinking and driving?" And they said, "Well, you got a martini in it." And I was like, "Well, that's your martini glass.
Mhm.
That's a licensed product that you have." And I said that there's no motorcycle in it, there's no helmet, there's no keys. And they're like, "Well, if you can get across to people that that's something you do after the ride." And so I said, "Well, why don't I call the painting after the ride?"
Ah.
Statement. So in 2004, the first Harley Davidson piece that I ever did that didn't have a motorcycle in it was a piece called After the Ride, which had this beautiful frosted martini glass on the corner of the pool table, olives in it. You can see frosted inside the glass. I mean, amazing. Brought it to the Harley Davidson dealer convention. Huge hit. Oh my God. Unbelievable amount of sales. So that started the Harley Davidson lifestyle program. And then I started thinking about what else does Harley make? Oh, they make gambling tables. You can get a Texas Hold'em Harley Davidson table. So I did a beer piece with chips, Harley Davidson chips, and a gambling piece. Huge hit. Harley Davidson's got pinball machines that they've done from Bally over the years. I did a in your face, close up, realistic painting of a pinball machine. Another big hit. And then in 2000, maybe six, I came up with the idea to design a Harley Davidson wine label. And so I did that, submitted it to Harley. Harley's like, "Oh, no, we don't have wine." I was like, "I know you don't have wine. I don't want to produce the wine,
Mhm.
but I made this wine label that I want to put on a bottle and do a still life of this Harley Davidson wine bottle piece." And they're like, "Well, you can't produce the wine." I was like, "I understand that, but I would like to give one of the bottles to the people that buy the print.
Mm.
It's a gift with purchase. It doesn't say it's a Harley Davidson licensed product. It's just a prop. It's a prop that goes with the limited edition print." Oh my God, that was even bigger. We
Hmm.
unveiled that at the Harley Davidson dealer convention. We sold the entire edition of all the prints in 2 days, all of them. And that started the Harley Davidson wine series. So we had to double the size of the prints because Harley Davidson, who was opposed to the idea,
Mhm.
actually called me. They said, "Oh, we've gotten some complaints from Harley dealers that they can't get the image." I'm
Mm.
like, well, it's limited edition. It's first come, first serve. They're like, well, you need to produce more on the next one. Or like, oh, now all of a sudden there's a next one. So then I did the next one. We doubled it, and then we went even more. And then we went. We originally went from 100 pieces to 195,
Mhm.
and then 495, and they were still selling out. So you never know. You got to keep throwing the up against the wall, and sometimes it sticks. So
Well, that's awesome to hear. And um, that's all my questions for today. And thank you so much for opening up about everything. It was so interesting to hear an artist's perspective about the motorcycle industry because I don't come across that a lot. And the
yeah.
fact you're so involved with Harley Davidson and you are really pioneering a lot of things for their brand in a lot of ways. So it's really interesting to see all that. So thank you so much.
Oh,
Um,
it's such a pleasure.
Yes, yes, and we would love to see, or we'd love to bring you back on in the future and see what else you're doing because it seems like you're not going to stop anytime soon.
No, I'm trying to recreate myself with every painting. I'm energized, and getting into the Hall of Fame this year in September or August. It kind of just, I don't know. It lit a fire under me too to take it to the next level. You see what else I can do, and see where I can take it the rest of my life.
Well, that's great to hear, and good luck with Sturgis and the Motorcycle Hall of Fame. And yeah, we're excited to see what else is coming out of your studio.
Yeah, thank you, Olivia. Thanks so much for having me on today.
Of course,
Right.
thank you so much.
All
Bye.
right. Take care. Bye bye now.